This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details. And
National Hockey League season is upon us. I think there was it yesterday? 3 games? Wild open tonight right here on the flagship, FM 100.3 The Fan, on the road against the St. Louis Blues at, I said earlier, the Checker Dome. That was just a joke. I miss the Checker Dome. I love that place. Checker Dome, Russo radio, I assume, has been imploded. It's not up any longer, is it? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought he was on the special system. My bad. Sorry about that, Russo. The Checker Dome,
no problem.
Does it still exist?
The Ram Stadium?
No, the old hockey arena that the Blues used to play in back in the day.
The Checker Dome.
Yeah.
I was thinking, because I'm looking out the window and I see the football stadium.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I know it exists. And last time, I thought you were making a joke because one of the last times I was here, I put out a picture and I said, nice football stadium, and Blues fans wanted to string me up from the arch.
They were bitter, huh?
No, the Checker Dome is long gone. And this is, it's funny. I was never at that, there at all. And this arena has had about 25 names since I started coming here. It was Kiel Center and Scott Trade Center, and now it's the Enterprise Center. But yeah, it's long gone.
Yeah, I figured it was. All right, let's get the injury stuff out of the way early. Who's available tonight, who isn't, and who's going to be out for how long?
Nico Sturm, it sounds like he's going to go under the knife for a back injury. They basically are saying 6 to 8 weeks. So that's really disappointing. He was their guy that was supposed to really help cure a lot of their ills on their penalty kill and face-offs, and brought a couple Stanley Cup rings of experience since he last played here. And I know he was super excited to get going here, and he got hurt first day of camp. So they really haven't had him all of training camp. And Zuccarello's out. He's going to see the doctor tonight to try to get an update. I know that he was quoted in Norway saying that he thinks he'll be back sooner than the 2 months that the Wild say he's going to be back. He was thinking, early to mid-November. So we'll see what the doc says tonight. And Brodin is not going to play tonight, but it sounds like he's very, very close and probably going to play on the homestand against Columbus on Saturday or LA on Monday.
All right, fair enough. Have we talked since the Gustafsson contract extension? I don't think we have.
I don't think so. Yes, I don't think so.
So did we assume this was coming? Is this something the Wild kind of had to do? Or are they doing it sooner than they really needed to? And what are the larger ramifications regarding how we feel about the kid goaltender?
Well, no, this was definitely well telegraphed throughout camp. Even before camp, I did a story in August where I sat down with Gus, and he talked about wanting to get an extension done, and I put in there that sources told me it was going to get done at some point in camp, and that Bill Guerin usually works fast on these things, and this one was super fast. It took a couple days to get it done, and I know it's a sticker shock to some fans to give him $6.8 million in this damn economy after the Kaprizov deal, but that is actually under market value for what goalies are going for right now. So he wanted to stay. The Wild needed to get it done. The goalie market next summer is absolutely barren. Obviously, Bobrovsky's going to figure out a way to stay in Florida. Jacob Markstrom is going to resign in New Jersey, most likely. And then, it's pretty much Skinner or Pickard, and Skinner's obviously taken Edmonton to a couple Stanley Cup finals, but I think most people will tell you that he's a dangerous goalie at times, and he showed it a little bit last night in the Edmonton game. So there really was it was kind of like Kaprizov in the fact that what's the alternative if you don't have him? Obviously, some fans could say, well, Jesper Wallstedt, and Jesper's still here. I mean, he's signed for 2 years at 2.2. It's not illegal to have two really good goalies. As I just said, goaltending, there's a dearth of it right now. There's just not a lot of these guys right now that are upper echelon goalies in the NHL. And so if you can, let's just say Volstead pops, all of a sudden you have another really good trade asset. So, and even on his next contract, he'll be coming out of the second one, and you could probably re-sign him pretty affordably in a rising cap world. So I don't think this is a big deal on the short term that any Wild fan should be like, well, how do you re-sign Gustafsson if you have this, so-called goalie of the future? Right now, we still have to see a lot of Wally. He's had a really good training camp, but as we've talked about, endlessly, his first 2 or 3 years of North American pro hockey didn't go nearly according to plan. And so right now they don't know what they have in him, but they know what they have in Gus.
The Wild, as you well know, better than most, got off to a terrific start last year, and then a lot of things interceded at that point. So given the injury list as it's currently understood and who's out for, how long on the basis of the best estimates, is it going to be close to impossible to match that start? How concerned are you about this team stubbing its toes right out of the gate because of the injuries?
I'm concerned. I don't love their depth right now. Plus, they have, on at least their opening night roster, they have 10 guys 24 and under. And I know fans have long wanted a youth movement here, but there's always growing pains with youth movements. And look, they have a guy tonight in Ziboya making essentially his NHL debut. Obviously, played 2 games in the playoffs. They have David Juracek, who was high risk, extremely high risk, high reward in the preseason. So he sometimes just scares you with his turnovers, within the real danger areas in front of the net and both blue lines. And then, a lot of their young kids that Ogren and Urov, they wanted one of these two to really secure that second line left wing spot, and they gave them ample opportunity in camp, and neither of them produced. And right now, one's starting on the fourth line tonight, and one's going to be in the press box with me. So that's a bit of a concern. And so with Nico out, now you have Hunter Haight coming up, making his NHL debut tonight. And as I reported in the last 2 days in The Athletic, a couple days ago on Monday when the Wild got the prognosis for Nico Sturm, they called free agent Jack Roslovic and offered him $1 million. He wanted 2.5, wouldn't come here. He's since signed for Edmonton at 1.5. But just the fact that Bill Guerin tried to do that tells you right now that he's concerned. And so I don't know how much leeway these kids are going to get. Especially as you mentioned, if they get off to a tough start. Last year they needed every ounce of that big start to make the playoffs. Remember, they made it on a tiebreaker, and so they almost collapsed. And so that big starts are very, very important in the National Hockey League. And so I really do think that Bill right now is already scouring the the trade market, to try to see if he can maybe get some center help. But for now, Ogren's going to get a chance. Haight's going to get a chance. Urov eventually will get a chance. And if these guys can make an impact, that would lower the urgency for Bill to address the situation. But I think it's something that he's already looking around about, because he knows that he can't afford with this team to have a slow start.
I've heard you talk about this, but maybe even earlier today, that another maybe alarm bell within the hockey community might be, and again, lines can change very quickly, right? We certainly know that. But is it a kind of a signal that you could get a little squeamish about, that you got Foligno at least starting on the second line? I mean, that doesn't seem like that's where he belongs on a good team that's going places.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely not what his cup of tea is. Now, he had a really good camp. He definitely has the ability to score. He brings a different element to that line. But he's not a second-line player. And Stanley Cup teams don't have a player like him on the second line usually. I mean, Sam Bennett's a different animal, and he's a absolute stud center, different position. But, you don't usually have this type of player in that capacity. And he's there by default. He's there because they didn't want to immediately go back to the old well and put Marcus Johansson there. And he's there because Liam Ogren and Danil Urov in camp didn't produce. And they were given every opportunity in top 6 roles and middle 6 roles to produce. Liam Ogren had 7 shots, no points in his 5 preseason games. Urov had 1 assist and 7 shots in 6 preseason games. And so they now are starting in the fourth line. I'll just be interested, let's just say if they fall behind tonight or Marcus just isn't fitting there, what's next? Do they go back to that old well and do they put Johansson there? or do they elevate an Ogren or eventually on the homestand put in a Urov in that situation? But the fact that these two, at 21 years old, I don't think this is anything that anybody needs to panic about. There are a lot of people that labeled Marco Rossi a bust too. But look, these guys are young. In Urov's case, he hasn't been, he's not used to North American hockey. It's going to take a while for them to adjust. But what that Zuccarello injury definitely did to this team is in a market, free agent market this summer where there were really no guys to go after they lost out on their targets and they traded for Tarasenko, they really felt comfortable about their top six. And now they've loaded up their top line. And I just wonder, especially with a bunch of road games coming up, they have a 5-game road trip after this 2-game homestand coming up. If you can always afford to have Boldy and Kaprizov on the same line, you might have to spread the wealth a bit. Maybe even put a Foligno on the Rossi line and get a Boldy on the second line because they are going to need on the road a couple lines to produce. And if that third line's not producing and the fourth line's not producing, it's going to put a lot of pressure on that top line. So this is another reason why I just think that Bill Guerin's already going to probably sooner than later start to look around the league. Unless, again, Ogren and Urov look like they are going to be able to produce at the beginning of the season.
All right, give me a player who the Wild is hoping can reemerge this season and that you feel pretty much has to emerge to be a big-time contributor if this team's going to really have the sort of successful season that everybody's been clamoring for.
I really think that Ryan Hartman is going to need to really start the way that he finished last year. He was one of their best players in the playoffs. He usually is always one of their best players in the playoffs. And he showed it again. And look, with Nico Sturm out, remember the entire goal this offseason was to, quote, help Joel Eriksson Ek.
Yeah.
And one big reason was because Ryan did not have a good year last year, and they really didn't like anything that they had on their fourth line, which is one big reason why they traded Murat Huzandinov. So, Ryan now, especially if he's in a third or second line role, is going to have to produce. He's come into camp. He's looked really good. He's fit. And he's got to be disciplined. He can't take bad penalties. Sometimes, especially in this building, he has that tendency to do that. But I really just, he's going to have to take huge draws now that Nico's out. Nico is going to be so much more to this team beyond a fourth liner from a penalty kill standpoint, key face-offs late in games. And now Ryan's probably going to have to take a lot of that load. And I think he's capable of it, but he's got to do it. Or this team is going to, have some trouble up the middle.
What is, in your mind, fair and rational to expect from Tarasenko at this point?
I'd love to see him get 20, 25 goals. To me, he didn't have the greatest end of his training camp. He looked really good in the practices, not great in the games, but he is a veteran. And I'll tell you, veterans don't like playing in the preseason. A lot of times they just are in do not get hurt mode and don't exactly, try at an even strength to go into the dirty areas. On the power play in Chicago, he was sensational. And that's where you really want it, especially that he's taken that Zuccarello spot on the number one unit. You really hope that he and Boyum could continue to have the chemistry that they seem to show that night against a Chicago team that doesn't have the greatest penalty kill in the world. So we'll see if that happens. I do think he's extremely motivated this year. He'll be definitely motivated tonight coming back to St. Louis. But look, he knows this could be his last chance at continuing to play in the NHL. He's not old by NHL standards by any stretch, but his game has definitely taken a step back the last couple of years. And, when you ask out of a place like Detroit and you are a former star that's traded for, quote, future considerations, which means absolutely nothing, that's humbling. And I think that is a humbling thing when all of a sudden, Detroit's basically like, here, take him for nothing and we're going to retain money. So I think he's going to come in really ready to go this year. And man, they are going to need it because, as we mentioned, they've already, with that second line absence of Zuccarello, they're lacking some scoring depth in that area.
Russo Radio live from St. Louis, Wild opener tonight, right here on the Fan. Size up for us, for the audience, I guess I should say, and for us, the division going into this season.
Well, I think that a lot of teams have taken a little bit step back, but I still think it's the most cutthroat division in the National Hockey League. I think that everybody is going to get better, even the Chicago Blackhawks. I think Nashville's going to be better than they were. I think Utah has a chance to make the playoffs. This team, the Wild, are going to see tonight, I really think is a sleeper in this division. Maybe I'll be wrong. But they got a big game goalie, even though he can get erratic, and Jordan Binnington. I mean, we watched him win the championship in the Four Nations tournament. He was absolutely sensational, made 2 game-saving saves on Austin Matthews in overtime before McDavid won it in the championship game, and he's won a Stanley Cup. And then you look at Robert Thomas. I think he's a star waiting to pop right now. He was one of the best players in the league in the second half of last season. Snuggerude's look great there. Kairos looked like, he was on fire at the end of the year. Holloway's somebody that could be a stud. Rovers. They just up and down their lineup. I really like what I see. I think Fox is a little bit of a loss to them. So I think they're good. I think Winnipeg's going to take a little bit of a step back, and I think Colorado and Dallas are the 2 teams to beat. So, look, we saw with Minnesota last year, Dan, that when they're healthy, they're really, really good. But what's scary is that last year they were actually healthy for the first 2 months of the season, and now they're already, up against it health-wise. So, I still like this team. I still think that they should be a playoff team. But they, as we saw last year, they cannot afford injuries, and especially to Kaprizov and Eriksson.
So some of the bigger contracts that have been signed or announced after the Kaprizov signing, do they make Kaprizov seem greedy?
It's hard not to say that. It really isn't. I don't begrudge the Wild for doing it. But I don't think his agent made him look very good. And, this is why last week when you asked me, is Kaprizov going to be the highest paid player for a week? I said, no, he's going to be for many years, because it was so obvious. It was so public the last several months that if Connor McDavid re-signed at Edmonton, it was going to be at a team-friendly price. And the reason why is because he wants to win a cup. I never thought it would be a 12.5, but when he signed 12.5, you just knew that the others were certainly going to be in that vicinity. And, Jack Eichel, I know he's in a no state income tax state, but look, 13.5 for him is undervalued in comparison to Kaprizov. He's won a cup. He could have been the Conn Smythe winner the year they won the cup. He's an absolute superstar center. McDavid, as we know, has brought his team to 2 Stanley Cup finals and the best player in the world. Connor signing at 12. So look, the Wild had to get it done. The alternative was not good. But, I don't love the fact that at the very beginning, the Wild went to such a high number. I think they probably didn't want to play the game because it was such an imperative thing for them to re-sign this guy. But when they went to 16 and Kaprizov said no, I just did not know where this was going to go. And, the indications I was getting inside from the team is that they weren't inclined to negotiate against themselves and raise their price. Obviously, with permission from the owner, Billy did that. But then he offers 17, and they have the audacity again to counter. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't make him look good. And, and look, I know that I do believe Kaprizov 100% when he says that he wants to win. And, I believe that he just was listening to his agent all along. But when you take 17 and the other guys are taking 12.5, 12 and 12.5 and 13.5, it just does seem hypocritical because look, the Wild do have cap space and they are still going to have the ability to make moves here, whether it's this season or next summer. But, certainly it's going to be a lot harder to fit all the everything into the pegs, to get these guys done. And just think right now, if he was making $14 million, we're talking $3 million right there that they could spend on a really quality player. And we're talking right now about Marcus Foligno being on the second line because they're having depth issues. So I don't think it makes him look great. And, most of it I blame on the agent. But look, he did the best that he could for his client. I still think the contract's going to age well. But let's put it this way: the other guys want to win too, and they were willing to play ball with their teams. They
obviously still had to sign him, as we talked about last week. Yep. The alternative was just too devastating a thought. That said, is there any reason to believe that if Guerin had waited until eventually some of these other contracts started being signed, that they could have gotten him for less?
No, sure, they probably could have gotten him for less, but I still think he would be the highest paid player in the league. I mean, McDavid to me is a total, like he's in his own ballpark. Yeah. He was doing this intentionally. I mean, the fact that he is making $1.5 million less than Draisaitl, I think it says everything about his character. But look, I mean, McDavid has $100 million in the bank. He also is going to have generational wealth till the day he dies because he's Connor McDavid. So I mean, Kaprizov was always going to be in a different ballpark. They were always going to have to quote overpay to keep him. But I don't think they wanted to take the risk with this agent. Every contract's been difficult with him, and I just think that when they went to that number and they said no, like I guess the one area where you can maybe question is why did you go to 16 right away? Why don't you start at 14 and a half? But look, Bill has said
they were trying to not play that game. Yeah,
he doesn't want the game. He doesn't like the game. He thinks it's a waste of time. He goes to his number and he usually sticks by it. And I think they always thought it would take 15 or 16 to get it done. Maybe they should have started with 15 and they could have gotten them at 16 or 16 and a half. But either way, there's no way they were getting Kirill Kaprizov done at 12 and a half, 12. Not when Draisaitl was making 14. And so he was always going to make a fortune. But, to be 17 when everybody else is so much less, I mean, I bet you it's even uncomfortable for Kirill. And I bet you he doesn't exactly love that, even though I'm sure he's very, very happy with his contract. But even inside the locker room, I'm sure there are players that talk about this. There's no doubt about it. He's making $10 million more than Matt Boldy. That's pretty crazy.
I assume you're just delighted that there's an actual game to cover tonight, right? A regular season game.
Yeah, I am.
That counts.
The only bad part about today is that there's 28 teams going, 14 games, and I wish I could watch them all.
Yeah.
So I'm only going to get to watch one. But yeah, no, I'm super excited. I love the opening night every single time. I love also the privilege of being in any building, whether it's home or away, for their opening night ceremonies. It's just a cool thing.
31 years? Is this year 31?
Yeah, this is my 31st season. Yep.
Wow.
Crazy, huh?
That's incredible. And you're like 35 years old. It's unbleevable.
I know. I started when I was in the womb.
Yeah, pretty much. You haven't aged a bit. It's remarkable.
No, I know. Except for the entire balding of the top of my head.
Yeah.
Tell
me about it.
Everything.
That'll happen. Have fun tonight. Appreciate you. We'll talk next week. Thanks, Russo.
See you, Dan. Take care.
Russo Radio from St. Louis, Missouri, where the Wild will open the 2025-26 season. All of the action, including, I'm sure just wonderful fallness pregame, in-game, between periods, post-game commentary, analysis, interviews, or is he taking opening night off? Because a lot of times we find out he's not even there.
Well, not only did he not take the night off, he filled in for the Paul Allen Project today.
I understand there was absolutely zero basketball talk. According to his world, 9 to noon, basketball doesn't even exist.
Basketball, football, baseball, tennis, golf, real world, nothing existed. I heard more about the New York Islanders today than I think I've heard in the last 10 years combined. That's not a compliment.
I don't doubt it.
You can join Meat Sauce Fleet Farm in Hastings, Craig Kilborn's hometown, this Saturday for their Oktoberfest celebration. He'll be there noon to 2 for the opening of Toyland, yard games, and more. Full details at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
A lot of really good, juicy quarterback discussion early in the broadcast, including a good visit with Sean Salisbury that centered on that very issue as well. The beauty of it is we got nothing but time. Vikings do not play this week. Their next game is a week from this coming Sunday against the Eagles. Was that a primetime game? No.
No, I believe that's our first noon game in a while.
That's a nooner.
Yep.
That's disrespectful. Although the Eagles are a little bit weird right now, too. The team you hate, well, the coach you hate, had a spirited...
The town I hate. Coach I'm fine with.
No, I mean the team that beat them last week.
Yeah, Sean Payton.
Denver had a terrific fourth quarter. Didn't they score like 21, 24? They scored. Yeah. They took over that game.
That was a mess.
In Philly.
Payton was at his worst at the end.
Who was?
Payton, my guy.
Your guy? Well, they played great, and they they
got some help.
You're never going to give him anything, are you?
No.
Well, I'll leave that to you. I will just say that was a terrific.
It was a good
Let's put it this
comeback.
way: if the Vikings win a road game like that in Philly,
KOC culture,
basically for sure.
KOC culture.
But where was I? So they're playing tonight.
Yes, against the Giants.
I think in New York. That game is. So then they'll have a decent amount of time off as well, right?
They will.
But that is a noon start, you tell me. Yeah, we have a bunch of nooners now, don't we?
Yes and no, because it's then right after
Thursday
the Eagles,
nighter.
it's the Thursday nighter against the Chargers.
That's true.
And then a string of noon games, yeah.
A couple of A-section items. We don't have a lot of time to do that these days, but there is stuff worth getting into. Are you familiar with Kevin Stitt? Do you know who Kevin Stitt is?
I don't think I do.
He is the Republican governor of the state of Oklahoma.
Okay.
He's also chairman of something called the National Governors Association. He is, some of his comments are causing some ripples, one could say, inside the Republican Party, especially in MAGA world. Here's what he had to say. This was an interview, I guess, with the much hated New York Times, but he granted the interview. And here's what he had to say regarding the objections of Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, and actually at that big forum,
Tim Walz
in Minnesota, Walsey as well, anticipating the possibility of the Guard ending up here. They've both criticized that decision by the president. Here's what the governor of Oklahoma had to say. We believe in the federalist system. That's states' rights. Oklahomans would lose their mind if Pritzker in Illinois sent troops down to Oklahoma during the Biden administration. There's no arguing with it. There's no comeback to it, quite frankly. But is it going to even make a ripple in MAGA world? I don't know. We talked about this with Kessler yesterday. That was yesterday, right? Because today's Thursday.
Yep.
That somebody had written a story indicating that there is privately growing unease among some Republican leadership on, just let's send the Guard. Don't mess with it. Just send the Guard. Let's just go after him. And so we'll see if this starts. That he's gone on the record. Is it possible that others would get braver as well? I doubt it, but he's 100% right. There's the howling, the screaming, the how dare you that would be going on would be never ending and probably righteous. That's the irony of this particular situation. Totally unrelated, but also from the A section, a story that I put into the classification of not a huge story, but a story that, to me, raises lots of questions in my mind about concessions that we are making culturally. And I'll at least start on it now. We went long on Russo, and then we'll be able to get into it in more depth after the pause. And it's a story about libraries. And in this case, it's a Star Tribune story. And I don't know how many of you read it. It's about the Roundup Community Library. I'll read you a couple sentences from it. St. Paul's most visited library will close for at least 6 months to move its bathrooms and front desk because of security concerns. Community members have complained about drug use and people experiencing homelessness in the Roundup Community Library and its surrounding area in recent years. And library officials say they're confident that the $793,000 renovation can solve those problems. Some Rondo neighborhood residents and library employees aren't so certain. It had all the pluses, said Artika Tyner, who grew up in the neighborhood, about the library. But you now have issues that have been exacerbated over the years, and nothing is functioning properly. Isaac Milkey, president of AFSCME Local 1842, which apparently represents some St. Paul library workers, says that Rondo employees were not consulted in the renovation plans and think other solutions should have been examined instead. Here's the direct quote. "We don't think moving the bathrooms will do anything. The staff who work in the building are the experts, and they are not being listened to." And then there's some details about the renovation process. It's still early. What changes? Moving the reception desk closer to the door, allowing patrons to use the space more effectively. How so? I'm not exactly sure. There's a quote from, by the way, dates have not been set for the renovation, which could take up to a year. Frank White, a Rondo, described in this piece as a Rondo neighborhood elder and a St. Paul historian whose curated exhibits have been displayed at the library, says he doesn't visit anymore because of the drug use he witnessed in the past. He said he doubts the renovation will change the behavior at the library, which is located at Dale Street and University Avenue. Quote, "The solution is really taking care of the negative activity that surrounds the area. It's disappointing that nothing has been done." August, so that was just a couple of months ago, Rondo reduced its hours on Fridays and Saturdays and closed on Sundays because of ongoing challenges and resulting negative behavior in the area that made it difficult to adequately deliver safe and welcoming services. Let me repeat that again. Forced to reduce hours Fridays and Saturdays, not even open on Sundays, because obviously there was too much difficulty, too many challenges going on in terms of the behavior, making, one would assume, patrons feel relatively unsafe. Then there's a quote from the mayor of St. Paul, Melvin Carter. "We are transitioning out of an era where we build libraries for books." Carter said additional social services are key to the library's mission in the 21st century. After COVID, some libraries across the U.S. hired social workers to help librarians provide more services to patrons. As libraries' roles shifted, St. Paul and Hennepin County libraries employ social workers. Now, we've, I think, talked about that before, about how libraries have changed. I think we've even talked about some other places where there have been some security issues in libraries, and they're not all in that same boat. But what is just sort of accepted is what I don't accept. I think it's part of the problem, and I think that's part of what a couple of the individuals who seem to have good knowledge about that particular location are attempting to say. We concede too much. And I'm not sure in the concession of, well, it's not a library anymore. It's basically, come on in, you want to hang out a little bit, that's fine too. Whatever your intent is. It's come one, come all. It's supposed to be we try to be a welcoming community. You're not going to convince me that you're creating an environment that is conducive to anyone enjoying whatever is supposed to go on inside that library, which is still presumably supposed to revolve around books or electronic items, whatever the case may be.
Using the internet,
etc. But we get these stories all the time. Well, no, the library's not a library anymore. You got to understand, you're going to have people coming in off the streets. That's the concession that doesn't serve the patrons, and I dare say it doesn't serve the individuals who, however they are compromised, are using and turning libraries into places in which there is not the customary level of safety that one can expect. And what this comes off as is, well, we got to do something. We got some money. So maybe if we move an entrance around to a different place where maybe we can control the environment a little bit better, that's not the answer. And again, the folks who have the most to lose, obviously, the folks who use this place and have been around this place, they know it. They're already calling it, but they're going to be ignored because people have decided, no, we're changing our Like libraries are now a halfway house. I doubt they're even really qualified to do that kind of work. And is it even practical to do it? And is that not the issue? You make so many concessions that you defeat the purpose of the library in the first place, and you lie to yourself. Out of what you think is the goodness of your heart, you do not want to turn anybody away. But it depends on what the individuals, who may all be troubled for legitimate reasons, are doing in and around that location. And if they're doing things they should not be doing, and they are creating unrest or they are creating a lack of safety, we're big on safe places. Library is supposed to be a safe space to do whatever work you're looking for, to read or to get out of the madness. But if you make it part of the madness and say, well, no, that's just the way it is now, why? It comes off as in the name of, oh, no, we want to be more progressive. We want to be more open-minded about this. And I don't think anybody's interests are served. And again, the great irony is when you get past the bureaucrats and the elected officials and you get to the average rube who clearly have spent time there, they're already saying, you may feel better about yourselves. You got this money, and you can have when there's groundbreaking and the remodeling is done, you can have this press conference about. You can do whatever you want to it, but if you don't change the activity that's going on in that location or around that location, then really, realistically, not a thing is going to change. And I've never, I guess put me in the group that's never quite understood why this concession is so easily just sort of grandfathered in and accepted as, well, this is the most effective way to go forward. No, what you have to do, what's the key quote here? This is from, who's this? Frank White, the described, as I said, as a Rondo neighborhood elder and a St. Paul historian. The solution is really taking care of the negative activity that surrounds the area. It's disappointing that nothing really has been done. That's it. Move bathrooms around if you like. That's what the president of the local of the union there, who represents some workers, the staff who work in the building and the experts, they're not being listened to. Now, again, I understand you can't listen. You can't have individual workers, I guess, in charge of whatever program is you have in mind, but you might listen to them. And this has been going on, quite frankly, for a while. And I'm sure some libraries have adjusted better than others in terms of security, moving people around, moving people along, whatever the case may be. But doesn't this come off? I mean, it just comes off to me as we're going to feel better about ourselves, but we're not, if we're being honest, really in all of our concessions here, we're really not doing anything that makes it likely that a library can be a library, which is, frankly, to me, what it should still be. The notion it has to be something different, no, it only has to be something different if you do not confront the problems apparently going on near these places or inside the building. No, it's not another wild injury, at least not one that we know about yet.
Joe Ingles update?
No, not that either.
Oh, can I give away the bonus bucks, by the way? I forgot to do that.
Sure, go ahead.
The final keyword, thanks to two men and a junk truck. Whenever we have a guest, it screws me up. Russo got me there. Our national cash contest deposit is the 5 o'clock keyword. Go to KFAN.com, enter the keyword deposit. Thank you.
This is Dateline Duluth. This is via StarTribune.com as well.
Duluth?
That's one of the great callback Glenn Mason stories. It's funny. I mean, how now in the wake of his adopting Fargo,
Yeah.
I mean, couldn't I just as easily say Fargo?
Right.
Because he said Duluth in a sneering, contemptuous,
Yes.
condescending, like, why would you go to Duluth for anything?
Yes, when asking me where my then fiance at the time and I like to go hang out.
Right, yeah.
He said, go to Florida.
Yeah.
Then he offered up his Florida place, and
That didn't last.
we've never been there.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Dozens of alcohol breath tests conducted by law enforcement in at least 3 Minnesota counties may have been compromised because of operator error.
Saw this.
State officials reveal. More than 70 tests in Aiken, 45 in Winona, and 13 in Chippewa counties incorrectly used a data master instrument to test blood alcohol content over varying periods of time. This is according to the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. A control piece of equipment was installed incorrectly. In at least one case, fourth-degree drunk driving charges against a man were recently dismissed by the county attorney's office because of the mistake. In court documents, County Attorney James Ratz said the error compromised the validity and accuracy of the test results. Twin Cities-based defense attorney Chuck Ramsey said he noticed the inconsistency for two of his clients who were given breath tests in charge in Aiken County. Somewhere in here, this story, I thought the headline indicated that ultimately Hennepin might be affected too. There's Winona County, Aiken. Did they just draw me into the story? But where's the Hennepin County part? Yeah, because the subhead says, this attorney says Hennepin and Olmsted counties may have issues too. I don't see trying to see the details on that, where the closer to home might be involved as well. That's never good, right?
Joe Friedberg would have had a field day with that one.
That's for sure. You want to you want to hold individuals driving while, drinking accountable, obviously. But this is the worst case scenario because in some cases they may well have been guilty of those infractions, and they're now, so they may in those cases be likely to not be held accountable. And in other cases, they may not have been doing anything wrong at all, or they may not have been over the line. I guess I should say. See if there's any. I can't find any detail regarding an attorney saying that Hennepin might also be ultimately affected by this as well. So stay tuned for more. By the way, one other breaking A-section item here before we break for the top of the hour. This is via Wall Street Journal. Just what we were just talking about regarding the Oklahoma governor, his comments. A federal judge on Thursday blocked President Trump from federalizing or deploying National Guard members to Illinois for at least 2 weeks, saying continuing to militarize the response to local protests was likely to cause civil unrest. That's just the headline on it. My inclination is it will change nothing. I just don't think they have any interest. That they'll pay attention to the rulings that they like, and they'll ignore the ones they don't. Right? I mean, I don't think this is going to stop anything. And a couple of people have said, well, yeah, you try to be, you're tough on crime guy, and yet you seem bothered by these shows of force. The chief laid this down pretty effectively. He's in law enforcement. He's not exactly anti-law and order, law enforcement. And I have the same problem. There's a reason historically conservatives have gotten squeamish about using federal troops or, National Guard members in situations involving local crime. Can Democrats, we've certainly talked about this, are Democrats in some cases vulnerable on the issue of crime in local communities? 100%. So there are things that need to be done. The question is, at what cost if you start going down the road that Trump clearly wants to keep going down and probably include more cities because he enjoys it so much. There were supposed to be lines of demarcation in this regard, and that line has been obviously just shattered. There is no line at this point, especially as it pertains to the immigration issue as well. So stay tuned. More on that to come. There's your A-section reprieve from the toy department. I think we are going to kind of return to the toy department our final 30 minutes of the show. Ordinarily, we're out at 6 during the football season, but because the Vikings are in a bye week, we are going to go the distance. I will get to a story I've been embargoing for several days involving ongoing controversy about the bad blood that exists between the WNBA players, certainly the union, and the lame duck, I'm assuming she is at this point, commissioner of the WNBA as well. Stay tuned for all of that and more in our final thought. Ongoing conversation, Guardsy, about the bad blood that exists between the WNBA Players Union and the commissioner. By the way, does it bother anybody else that throughout really the entire WNBA Finals round, matching two really good teams, even though one of them doesn't have to be the Minnesota Lynx. In fact, Vegas is now on the verge.
Yep.
They've won the first 3 games of the series, including last night in Phoenix. That almost, I would say almost nobody, but that the number one subject is not the crowning moment for the WNBA this season, the postseason. A year ago, it was the series between, for all the controversy, it was the series itself between New York and the Lynx. Now, officiating was part of it, but it was about the series. It was about the back and forth. It's not this year. It's about the bad blood. Timing is supposed to be everything. The timing has not been particularly good in that regard. Just as easily could have had all of these conversations the week after. Not like the issues would have been forgotten at that point, but I digress. ESPN.com, Ramona Shelburne and Shelburne, I should say, and Kendra Andrews, they dropped a piece, this was 3 days ago, that I've been embargoing, that I finally want to get to, because they ask a lot. They lay out the sides, the lack of trust, the vulnerability of the commissioner for sure. But they raised another question. I wish actually they'd have raised it a little earlier in the piece. Is Nafisa Collier also vulnerable? Does she also have, is it possible she's in a position, in a compromising position as it pertains to this entire story? Well, let me give you an example of what they lay out in this piece, which again is an attempted overview about the state of the state when it comes to the bad blood. And they, believe me, they offer plenty of indictment on this leadership, although they also give it from the commissioner's office, although they do give that some nuance as well. Stay tuned for that in a minute. Back in February, sources say Engelbert called a meeting with Collier and her husband, Alex Bazell, the president of Unrivaled, a startup 3-on-3 league founded alongside Collier that some in the WNBA increasingly believe is becoming competition to the league itself. On that point, which I talked about a little bit last time we had this subject, explored this subject, especially as it pertains to the comments that Collier made regarding how poor the leadership is at the WNBA and how wonderful the leadership is by my husband. Right. Which might be true. Right. But
for a 3-on-3 league in the offseason, too, by the way.
That's another point.
With no real travel or anything that goes along with it.
Nowhere near the complications, but it's your husband, for God's sake, which I think means that the fawning media responding to this story at least needs to have some understanding of, and ordinarily would say, well, this may be true, but let's remember that relationship there. There may be that this individual is not going to be particularly objective, not to mention what you say, that it is apples and oranges because of the size of the operation, the size of the league as well. Regarding Engelbert, the commissioner, she's already unpopular, said one source with knowledge of the CBA talks, so let her be the bad guy in CBA negotiations and then replace her. Multiple league sources wondered what could happen or what would happen if the players who have loudly supported Collier this week simply refused to negotiate with the league on a new CBA until Engelbert resigned or was replaced. The most important people in this entire ecosystem are the players, one executive said. Lock them out if you want to, but all you're going to do is ensure that Unrivaled becomes the big person on campus as opposed to the W. I'm not even sure I believe that, but interesting quote. They go on to write, it's fair to wonder, of course, whether Collier's comments also serve a larger aim to promote Unrivaled, the league she co-founded with her husband and New York Liberty forward Breanna Stewart.
Interesting.
And push the WNBA publicly in CBA talks. Quote, it's a total conflict of interest, said a source with knowledge of the situation. Her husband runs the league that's in competition with the W, and she has equity in it. Collier and Stewart, for the record, are also both on the executive committee of the Women's National Basketball Players Association, which is negotiating with the league on the new CBA. Now, I'll quickly add, the players themselves don't seem to be asking these questions. They seem comfortable with not only with what Collier said, but with her representation. That's up to them. Ultimately, it's their decision who they have represent them. But this stuff, again, if we're going to have a serious conversation, an honest conversation about leadership in the league, this should be part of the conversation. It's too easy to champion Collier largely because why? Nobody likes this commissioner. And probably she has merited most of the criticism she's received. But we can't become so blinded by that we don't factor in some goofy circumstances here. We go, wait a minute now. Ordinarily, we would call that in any other circumstance. We'd say, well, they're not direct competing interests, but they are in some ways competing. And you have to wonder whose interests that Collier then is representing when push comes to shove, given her money is in this other, her stake as apparently a very good businesswoman is in this league. One other item regarding Engelbert, and we talked about this, I think, last week. Bedside manner seems to be awful, although I am bored with the criticism of she didn't call me after my injury. I think that's silly. I think that's completely overcooked and overblown, and I still think that's more about the fact that the Lynx, including Collier and the head coach, are bitter about the way it finished, that they collapsed in the series and opened the door to another team reaching the WNBA Finals. But here's what they lay out about the state of the league under Engelbert. There's very little dispute how much the WNBA has grown during Engelbert's tenure. According to a report earlier this year, revenues are projected to top $1 billion this year. ESPN, ABC, WNBA ratings hit an all-time high this season, averaging 1.3 million viewers across 25 games. Merchandising sales up 500% this year. The league invested $50 million in charter flights, a key initiative for players.
Wow.
But owners also just got $250 million in expansion fees from 3 cities, with half a dozen more lined up to pay even more if there are future expansions. They ask, how much of the credit does Engelbert deserve for these gains versus the emergence of young stars, such as Clark, Reese, Becker's, rising star power of players such as Wilson, Collier, and Stewart, and heightened level of competitiveness across the league? That remains a topic of great debate in league circles. This week, sports economist and professor David Barry wrote in the New York Times that if WNBA players received a similar percentage of basketball-related income as NBA players, the top stars should be making more than $3 million a year. Instead, they earn less than 10% of that. According to sources on both sides of the CBA negotiations, under the current CBA, players don't get additional revenue sharing, 9% as opposed to the 49 to 51% in the NBA, until the league has generated a certain level of income, which it says it has yet to do after decades of multi-million-dollar losses at the franchise and league level. Players want the league to give them the data, proving those revenue benchmarks have not even been met. So some of this stuff is as old as time when it comes to sports players and management ownership debate the next collective bargaining agreement. That's all part of the deal. That's all fair in what we like to say is love and war. However, I'm not going to put the commissioner at the top of the list for the new TV deal, which is excellent. All of those revenues being up, the decision to finally charter. I'm going to say absolutely a lot of that is the Clark phenomenon.
Totally. Chartering for sure.
A year ago, many of these same players who are now championing her we're doubting and we're not interested in hearing about. But I don't think you can say that she has been, if on her watch, she seems to maximize to the degree that the league has been maximized. I certainly would indicate that would suggest, as some people have said, her business acumen is pretty legit. And the idea that she's thumbing her nose at the players and doesn't want to do well by the players have done, in some areas, have done well by her, starting with, I'm assuming she had to be involved in the most significant change, which was the charter deals, which is something absolutely was needed to be done. So all this, I think, reminds me is that there's a lot more gray area here than we'd like to think. She does not have the trust of the players. That seems undeniable, and that eventually will probably, I think, make it likely that she loses her job. Because the best commissioners find a way, even though they tend to be working for owners, to gain the trust of the players as well. Now, sometimes the battles are going to be so great because of the money involved, et cetera, et cetera. But I thought this was a really good overview that attempted, I think, to be fair. And if nothing else, just to raise lots of questions. They didn't draw conclusions, but they raised a lot of questions. And they follow up on the question I had a week ago, which was, well, wait a minute now. Who is Collier serving here? How self-serving are some of these comments? They might be true, but she's in a compromised role, as far as I'm concerned, given her stakes in this other league. And by the way, the notion that was the other thing. There are even some people said, guess what? All the players could go to this other league. Stop it. Whatever you're smoking, stop it. The other league's a cute enterprise, but people don't pay attention to that the way they've now come to pay attention to the WNBA. It's not even close. We'll come back, wrap up the show next.
Show wrap presented by American Pressure, commercial-grade pressure washer since 1975.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
Controversial show today. Lots of good stuff, though. Very eclectic guest lineup that included the inbox, Dr. Dan's inbox, some outstanding contributions as always. Great stuff between 3:30 and 4 from Sean Salisbury. If you missed it, go back and you can podcast it after today's broadcast. And, of course, Russo from St. Louis inside the newly refurbished Checker Dome to talk Minnesota Wild hockey. The Wild will be in action tonight in their opener that is coming up after a short fan on demand, and it will be then the Wild pregame, and then Wild versus the St. Louis Blues. Game 1 of 82.
Think about it.
Yeah, 82. Still too many games in the NBA and NHL regular season.
Isn't it 84 now in the NHL?
Oh, you know, you're right. I forgot about that. You're right. It is, isn't it? 84?
Yeah.
Added 2.
Take that, Fallness. I'm paying attention.
Oh, my God.
They added 2.
Oh, that's right.
And you got to get it in like 5 months instead of 6 because of the Olympic break.
Man, this just goes, what a grind.
How many will Kirill Kaprizov play in?
84 games now total?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm going to say 46.
You know what's so sad? I was going to say 47. We need to maybe take a vacation from
you might be right.
So
weird
sad.
choice, writes Mark, to defend Engelbert. She's a big girl, not sure why she needs defending. We do this all the time. We rip adults and defend them all the time. It's not even defending. It's saying there's maybe a little bit more to the story here. There should be some questions regarding some other individuals as well. That might be too tough for
84 next year, 82 this year. My 47 still stands.
I'll stay with 46. I'll talk to you tomorrow at 3.